Welcome, new and returning viewers. I'm Irene, this is Inkworks, and today is a show and tell session. Normally, I do watercolors, gouache, or fountain pens and inks. In fact, I've been sitting on the latest Magello watercolor journal footage for a while because I was distracted with stuff. That will be a future upload. For now, this is what's going to happen. I'll show you my new notebook/journal from when I first got it, some photos from a recent trip, and how the new journal looks now after using it for a few weeks, all while telling you little anecdotes that may or may not relate to what you're seeing on screen. Sound good? Well, them's the breaks, and that's the deal. I did it. I got a traveler's notebook, except put quotation marks around traveler's notebook because it's actually a Voyager notebook. Producer Mike found it for around $15 and it came with several inserts. He also purchased extra dotted inserts because those are my favorite type. Those were about $5 for a pack of 2. Awesome deal, right? Well, don't get too excited because if you use the official Traveler's Notebook system, these inserts are not compatible. Technically, they'd fit, just not perfectly, because the Voyager system's dimensions are different, so the inserts are a little smaller. Frankly, I am not bugged about any of this, because 1, the Voyager size works great for me. 2, the faux leather cover is environmentally friendly. Wait, is it? Is faux leather better for the environment? Someone help me out with that. And 3, I won't have to throw down $60 or more to get the Japanese-made Traveler's Notebook anytime soon. Not that it was going to happen. It all reminds me of how, as a teenager, I'd see the cool kids wearing Nikes and flashing their newfangled Trapper Keepers, while I was sporting Kmart tracks and clutching several sweat-frayed Peachies. Wow, where did that come from? I'd like to eventually dip my toe into reading journals, and maybe one of the dotted inserts would get me in the door there. Actually, there's been a big holdup with my reading. About 10 years ago, my public library placed a $40 fine on my account. They claimed I didn't return a book, which is bullcrap. But the shame of that fine has kept me from stepping into the library all this time. Well, the shame and the fact that I refused to pay for a bogus charge. Anyway, there's gotta be a statute of limitations, right? Certainly, they don't keep derelict accounts in their system forever. So I was thinking of applying for a new card. What do you think? Will I get to read for free again? Or will I end up in library jail and featured on one of those "she didn't think she'd get caught" shows? If I could shift into an animal, I'd like to be a bear. Gorging on berries and fish, then holing up in a den for half a year sounds fabulous to me. That said, I have a healthy fear of encountering them in the wild. So on a recent trip into Northern California, I was on high alert and subsequently accosted a couple of young men under Redding's Sundial Bridge. Let me explain. My niece and I were enjoying the view from the banks of the Sacramento River when growly sounds began emerging from the thicket. Was it the young couple I'd earlier seen walking that way? Look, you do you, California. I'm not saying they're getting it on in the groves down there, but one does hear stories. Then I remembered that California is known to be bear country. The grizzly is their official state animal, after all. Never mind, grizzlies have been extinct in the state of California for decades. I don't want to encounter black bears either. By the way, did you know the American black bear, Ursus americanus, comes in black, brown, cinnamon, and even blonde? See, you can learn something here. The point is, I was relieved to see a couple of strapping young men appear who I could keep between the mystery noises and myself. My conscience, however, wouldn't allow me to leave without alerting them with a, "Pardon me, but would that be a bear?" They responded by politely tilting their heads toward the thicket for a few seconds before asking, "Where are you from?" "Washington State." "Why?" If you've ever driven through Grants Pass and wondered, did I just see a... Yes, you did see a caveman. Apparently, there's a decades-old organization called the Caveman Club. It was created to promote the town of Grants Pass and their local attraction, the Oregon Caves National Monument and Preserve. It's where you can join a tour of the cave system beneath the Siskiyou mountain range. The caveman statue dates back to 1971 and is a prominent landmark. We stayed overnight on both the way down and the way back up. And I think that statue messed with my mind, because during the second visit, I had some very strange thoughts. But more about that later. The only reason we booked a room in Grants Pass was because it split our drive into pretty much equal halves. The point is, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that I'm a horror movie buff, so it won't surprise you to hear that the whole time we were there, I could not get The Descent out of my head. You know, the movie about a group of plucky spelunkers who get lost in a cave system and hunted by vicious underground mutants. Yeah, not the most restful sleep I've ever had. Steel wool is known for its scrubbing ability, not its flavor profile. Just throwing that out there in case you're unfamiliar with the stuff. I understand it's commonly used in professional kitchens to clean cookware and other stainless steel surfaces. Well, as my nephews and I were having dinner out and discussing the next day's San Francisco excursion, I decided what I was chewing on was unacceptable and discreetly pulled it from my mouth. Studying it there on the edge of my plate, it became clear it was a wiry strand of steel wool. Fortunately for me, I've found very few foreign objects in my food over the years, so I didn't mention it to my fellow diners and simply sat back with suddenly diminished appetite. Hey, I ate half of my entree, and it was delicious. Going on the premise there was only the one piece of steel wool, I was relieved I got to enjoy that first half. The thing is, 1, we really needed to hash out our San Francisco plan. 2, I was just happy to have a cocktail in my hand. And 3, we were already enduring snail's pace service. I didn't want to add more stress. Of course, when our server arrived, I brought it to his attention, and he took care of everything. By everything, I don't mean he personally drove me to the hospital. I was fine. I mean he removed my meal from the bill and brought me a free dessert to go. And as we all know, free cheesecake soothes most ills. Considering how much we ate out during this trip, our experiences were mostly positive. Sure, several restaurants had us waiting longer than we'd have liked, but then there was no-nonsense Sue at the Lazy Dog. I don't recall her real name, so that's what I'm calling her. She was the most coldly curt server we had, yet she was also the most efficient. My meal there, the fried chicken sandwich, was great. You might be wondering, but Irene, how good can a chicken sandwich get? Well, let me read the menu description. A hand-dipped buttermilk boneless chicken breast, Havarti, honey mustard, coleslaw, tomato, and pickles on a brioche-style bun. I paired that with a side of their lemon pepper tots. Yum, yummity, yum. It made me wish they'd bring the lazy dog here to the Puget Sound. Since I was using this as a kind of travel journal, the first item is my itinerary. It's covered by a blank sheet to preserve privacy. You might be wondering, but Irene, you just shared a deep-seated childhood issue, which is true, but one must draw a line somewhere. Not saying I regret my confessions here at Inkworks. Things like past stupidity, remembered humiliations, and last year's broken arm incident, which was entirely the watermelon's fault. Just saying location specifics are a good place to zip it. Anyway, the subsequent handful of spreads cover the months of July and August. They include calendar layouts and brief journal entries. The clear vinyl insert is handy. I'm glad it came with the notebook. Of course, I love having dotted paper. The lined paper isn't as useful for me. Perhaps I'll leave that one out and keep it next to my home computer to hold addresses and passwords. Having blank paper is a plus. I can see doodling or collaging in that one. In case it isn't clear by now, instead of just talking about wanting to travel, I got to go somewhere for real. And that somewhere was Northern California, all the way from South Sound, Washington. Ostensibly, the trip was to meet up and spend time with family members we rarely get to see, but it was also a stealth foodie adventure. My brother asked my niece and I to select restaurants along the way, and my nephews took us to their favorite places. Yeah, I was spoiled with delicious meals and treats, including but not limited to crispy calamari, mango malasadas, shaved snow desserts, Korean barbecue, and my first, second, and third times having the In-N-Out animal-style double burger. That's right, 3 times. And I am so stoked about getting an In-N-Out soon in Western Washington. By the way, the folder with pockets was a DIY project. I created it with a sheet of cardstock, a ruler, scissors, and a glue stick. I didn't record the process since I wasn't sure it would work, but maybe I'll make another one in a future video. On game night, my nephew's girlfriend brought us takeout from a place called The Melt. They'd been raving about them, but skeptical me was all, I don't know. Well, their Swiss and Shroom Melt Burger was, in my opinion, even better than what we get locally at Lucky's Burger Stand. In the past, I've gushed over Lucky's Mushroom Burger, so you know how I feel about them. But just listen to this description from the Melt's menu. More than a third pound of our signature Angus and Wagyu beef, chopped, grilled, and filled with loads of melted Swiss, fresh spinach, grilled mushrooms, crispy onions, and ranch. How could I say no to that? I really should have had more salads, but gosh darn it, there were so many opportunities for great burgers. The biggest day of our trip was spent in San Francisco, and all of our planning paid off. Since he'd already been there several times, my brother opted out and made plans elsewhere. So it was myself, 2 nephews, a girlfriend, and my niece. We'd driven to Pleasanton the night before and stayed in a couple of hotel rooms. Early the next day, we made our way to the BART station, purchased some Clipper cards, and boarded the train. We all agreed that loading $30 each would be sufficient. I understand there are other options, but the Clipper cards worked fine for us. It covered what we used, the BART trains and the city streetcars. We got off at the Embarcadero station, which is conveniently across from the ferry building. It was Saturday, and the farmers' market was in full swing. There were numerous stalls selling crafts, art, jewelry, clothing, baked goods, and produce. Inside the ferry building were even more places to shop, eat, drink, and snack. On the back side, open and facing the water, are tables and benches to watch the ferries come in. Most of our group wanted to explore Chinatown, and I encouraged them to do so while I stayed to enjoy the waterfront. Because, 1, I'm a slow walker and would only drag them down. 2, I don't do inclines well. In fact, I may even have a touch of bathmophobia. And 3, I can't get enough of the waterfront. So I made my way along the Embarcadero. And can I say, if you're on the fence about walking all the way to the end of Pier 7, just do it. But watch your step, since the wood planks make for a slightly uneven surface. Oh my gosh, it was worth it. There were quite a few people strolling the pier, including several elderly men with fishing rods. It actually reaches far out over the water, providing a great view of the city skyline, the Bay Bridge, and all sorts of watercraft. Not sure what was the best part of Pier 7. Perhaps it was the presence of benches along each side, or maybe it was the brisk bay breezes on a 100-degree August day. My end goal being Pier 39, I continued my walk passing various points of interest, such as a science museum, a cute cafe, a cruise ship terminal, and an Alcatraz tour dock. The whole time, I felt surprisingly safe. There were lots of people. Children, families, dogs, and plenty of spots to stop and sit. If you don't opt for one of the pedicab rides, that is. Those are 3-wheeled cycles with a 2-passenger seat at the back. I saw several young men cycling up and down the street offering rides for a fee. I once watched a YouTube video of a guy who walked the same path as mine in about 20 minutes. Yeah, no, it took me way longer. Like I said, slow walker. And again, totally worth it. Pier 39 is pretty neat. I did my souvenir shopping there. Towards the center, a live performer was entertaining an audience, and there were lots of shops and restaurants to poke into. But the best part is the back and its view of Bay Waters and Alcatraz Island. That was the one spot where I felt chilled and wished I'd brought a sweater. Before I'd even left home, producer Mike had warned me, "You better take a sweater." At the time, I was all, "Get off my back, man. It's California in August." Oh, the irony. Is it weird that one of my San Francisco highlights was going into Candy Baron and buying a bag of saltwater taffy? I know there are other places where one can buy that sort of stuff, but Candy Baron has so many flavors. Plus, it's a really fun shop to browse and admire all of the old-timiness. Yes, I did get a glimpse of the sea lions. Only a glimpse, since people lined the railing like 4 rows deep. It seemed like once someone nabbed a spot at the rail, they did not want to leave. I tried to lift my phone up to get some shots, but Since I'm a shorty, the best I could get was a bunch of tops of heads. Whatever. The best thing about the sea lions is how they bark like dogs, and there's no blocking that. Upon regrouping, we all hopped on a streetcar that took us back to the ferry building, and from there we walked to the BART station. It would have been nice to stay longer, but we had several hours of travel to get through, so... Of course it would be wonderful to visit San Francisco again, but I have the feeling this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, and thanks to my relatives, it, as well as the rest of the trip, was a highly memorable one. So, about the return stay in Grants Pass. It was at the same hotel we stayed at the first time, but I'm the sort of person who requires repetition for things to stick, at least 2 or 3 times, but ideally 5 or 6. So the room layout still felt strange and unfamiliar. Well, after a middle-of-the-night bathroom break, I made my way back to bed. Except, since I didn't want to wake my roomies, I hadn't turned on any lights in the room. It was pitch black. So as I shuffled along with arms outstretched, I walked into a wall. No, not a wall, a closet. I was inside a closet. Not only was I inside the closet, but I was also giggling. Immediately, I put my hand over my mouth, because I know darned well that if I'd woken up in bed to a loud thump and a hee, I'd have screamed my head off. And it occurred to me that would have been an awesome prank to pull, pretending the room was haunted. I could have clawed at the wall while making ooh noises, but I have never been a prankster. Doesn't mean I wasn't shaking the bed later with suppressed laughter. That's what happens when you're amused by small things. Speaking of strange noises, maybe it was my imagination, but on the previous stay at that same hotel, I was certain I heard faint piano music all night long, which is fine if it's a YouTube ambiance video to help me sleep, but coming from a mystery room at a hotel? Ooh. It was a great week. I got to see my nephews, eat good food, listen to road tunes, and experience a lot of firsts. The cherry on top is that me, my brother, and my niece are all still on speaking terms. It's a win all around. I'm happy to share this show and tell session. You got to learn a few things about me. As they say, forewarned is forearmed. Until next time, remember to return those library books. Otherwise, the guilt will eat you alive. I mean it. I've had recurring nightmares about finding years overdue items just lying around the house. Then woken up thrashing. No way. I'm sure I returned that one. And stay artsy, my friends.